Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Legacy Liftoff podcast by Dronadair. Very fun episode today with a former client, friend, someone that I met back in, I don't know, early 2020 during COVID, the CEO of Vertspec, Andy Trench. Andy, thanks for hopping on today, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah, dude, it's been too long, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to start this podcast was to shed light on, cool people doing cool stuff, and I as I'm rifling through my head of people that I've met throughout my years in the industry and just doing different things in different areas. I didn't want to pigeonhole it to just one section or pilots or enterprises or whatever. But I really, your name came up, and I'm like, you know what? I got to reach out to Andy because you're doing some pretty cool stuff in, the telecom space, telecommunications and whatnot too. So I always start off at each episode, just kind of getting a little bit of a background on you and your story and how you got into drones, because I think one thing I've been learning is just like everybody has a different really origin story of like, why did I choose drones? And
For better or worse.
yeah, right, it's crazy. And I know you worked for, was it like Zoom Video or something like that, and some other sensor companies and whatnot. But I think, before I get into that or we get to that part of the story, um, what kind of started the love of drones, or like how did you first get into this industry?
Well, I came into it before we had even really settled on the word drone. Back then, it was a military operation, and you didn't really want to use the word drone back then. So it came from RC aircraft, and before quadcopters even existed, and right at the cusp of lithium power. So just after you would need to fiddle with a gas motor to get an airplane in the air, I discovered that there were low cost remote control helicopters on the market, and some kind of inner child nerd sentiment took over, and a little bit of messing around with one turned into a full-blown what some might call an addiction at that point to RC aircraft and upgrading. And I think the first one I bought maybe flew for all of a fraction of a second, smashed on maybe my kitchen island in my kitchen, and I fell in love with even building and rebuilding and modifying them. So it went from RC helicopters, collective pitch helicopters, to uh, fixed wing airplanes, and then the advent of the quadcopter. And at the time, then it was balsa wood sticks, a KK board. You were basically having to write command line code to set PIDs. And, we were using upside down propellers for the counterclockwise propellers. So this was before DJI had their stranglehold on the industry, and there was even purchasable kits, ready to fly kits for quadcopters. So I came into it kind of honestly as a
Yeah, and I
hobbyist.
think that's a fun story, because too is like I find a lot of times people in the older start of that beginning stage, I should say,
Yeah,
of
aging myself here.
really, yeah, it's like so many people made that jump from like RC cars and that hobby really, and that love of just flying things or building things and learning kind of how they operate. Um,
Mhm.
and transition it into what it is today. Obviously, it's a whole new world, but it's a lot of the same in some ways too.
Yeah, I would think you seldomly find somebody who begrudgingly got into drones, right?
Right.
They didn't like, their boss didn't make them go buy a quadcopter, and they sighed and went to Best Buy and started that branch of their company or something. But yeah, I think coming into it honestly as a hobbyist and just a fascination with aircraft, aeronautical and space, anything as a kid to that point. Um, I was elated. I think we're all, not all of us, but most of us are lucky to have partners that support, this endeavor into kind of hobby or into kind of an unknown space. And I was lucky that my wife and partner supported me into taking the next step, which is turning a hobby into a business, which, I mean, me and you could probably fill hours of kind of the ups and downs of that
Right.
experience. But liking it at the beginning is a good start. Turning that into a business and turning that into something that is, an actual viable living, not just, affording your toy hobby in your weekend, flying an
Yeah.
RC airplane. So, but
Yeah.
ultimately, that jump came from necessity on my end. I mean, we are designers, interior and exterior architect, design build company between my wife and myself. So, doing the work we were doing in Rhode Island, I needed to take some measurements on a roof. And I'm looking at my aircraft and my hobby saying, why can't my hobby get me the information I'm looking for? I've got aircraft. What can I put on this aircraft that's going to help me take measurements? And this was before photogrammetry had really become what it is today. Obviously, it has always been around since, aerial
Right.
photography. But the idea that a 3D laser scanner could be attached to a quadcopter or larger and do three-dimensional scanning of an exterior object or even an interior space from an RC aircraft set my mind on a path towards kind of commercializing uh, a survey tool or a geospatial data collection tool, which suited, my lifestyle and my, current company doing construction. So that led to some fairly expensive purchases with partners of ours, Velodyne and some other, when you're out front, you kind of pay for it. So we were putting, $30,000 lasers on home built octocopters before that was even really a thing. So, we lay claim to some early advancements, but there wasn't the support, there wasn't the onboard computing that we have today. There was so many things missing that, today it makes it looks so easy to take it out of the box and put, some thermal in the air. But doing
Right.
that back in 2000, 14, 2013, 2014, both took. You're either smart or you're stupid to bolt that equipment to your home built
Well, I,
octocopter.
I think it's got to take a pretty good combo of both, right? To also see that it's a possibility and to try it and to risk it. And I think that's in anything, right? Is like, especially in a new market or you're
Yeah,
trying something new to penetrate an industry that really was at the true infancy stages, back then. And still, in some ways are. Some will argue that we're not anymore, but I would say we're kind of in that, more so not, but it is a
I,
great way.
in the arc of technology into the future, I think we're at the very very beginning of what a quadcopter multi-rotor aircraft is going to be, and we've seen it, just in the past few years how fast it's moving. So
Yeah, we've talked about it on some other episodes too, is like how the technology moves so much faster than, and the software and the sensors and the equipment and everything else than obviously the regulations does and everything that we need to really push the boundaries of what the industry can do. But
yeah,
I obviously we're talking 13, 14, right? Like that was when you kind of really started doing those things. But
yeah.
um you know, where did what were you doing after that? And I guess if so, you're playing around with it, you're putting these things up in the air, you're testing it out, really trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. Hopefully, not crashing too many $30,000 systems in the air in between. But how did you kind of transition now from that to, was it did you start Vertspec right after that? Did it take a little bit of time? Like, give us kind of where that timetable or where you went after that.
It still took a little bit. So we were in Rhode Island. We're doing kind of commercial film work, and at the time, probably the only aircraft within a 100-mile radius that could lift a DSLR, which was a big deal at the time, right? To get above the GoPro and to carry, the range of Sony cameras, or even into the Red Epics and things like that then. But, the entrepreneurial spirit was going, there's a business model here. And at the time, it looked like hardware because DJI didn't have that hold on it. Software, the kinds of software that we're using to consume this kind of data was so far out then that it was a pipe dream, the kind of AI and things we're doing today. But back then, so the airframes, the payloads, and the kind of sensor integration stuff really seemed to be kind of like wide open space, green field to develop purpose-built aircraft that did really high value tasks. And at the time, this was really early on in even some of the agriculture efforts and some of the other big names that some are around and some are not, kind of pioneered into the space. But at the time, so really using my knowledge of kind of architecture, design, and engineering to build a large scale aircraft and payload that would be, in some instances, their first either LiDAR or photogrammetric kind of drone platform. So that was a company I started called Exact Sense. That was born out of the first company you mentioned called Zoom Video. So I still own zoomvideo.net, which I'll just hold on to that name for a while.
Right? Why not? You could be like what is it?
I would
Taco
love to
from what was that?
say that again.
Well, I was gonna
I
say
was
you
going to say,
could be
I'd
like,
love to get back to the kind of creative content that was being done then now, instead of, the hyper nerdy world of telecommunications infrastructure.
yeah, for sure. You could be like Taco from the League if you've ever seen that, where I think he like accidentally bought like Dallas Cowboys or Cowboys.com and he sold
Yep.
it off to Jerry Jones for like a great right.
Yep.
Just hold on to those URLs out there.
I,
You never.
I I have been known to hold on to URLs for way too long. You kind of like have one of those nights where you buy up an entire space and then you're paying for it for 5 years times however many, you know. That I
I
don't necessarily dissuade people from doing that either. There's only so many words left.
Yeah, I have a friend in the industry that I know he has a plethora of domain names. Yeah, exact science. I know how. So then you transitioned first into
Right.
that, correct?
Yep.
Did you start in the telecom space with Exact Sense, or was it something that you knew that you wanted to take it from sensors and being able to integrate it into the UAV space, right? And then apply that to surveying and mapping and really then allow you to create and deploy these for inspections. But was it in your mind that like it was always telecom, or was it something that you thought I could do this across a lot of different areas, or is it just something that you were focused on or that you were good at or that you knew?
No, telecom didn't come out as the first kind of problem to solve. It seemed like large area survey and kind of getting an aircraft that flew the longest and just took the best pictures, that stitched the best, mosaic or three-dimensional data was the play. And then individual use cases started kind of coming out of the woodwork. And like yourselves, we went through a startup accelerator. We did Mass Challenge in 2015, came out with a big cardboard check, and um,
Nice.
and looking for a focus, right? That's what you do in those programs, and that's what kind of startup kind of tries to train everybody to kind of target a single
Yeah.
market and specialize. And at the time, like I mentioned, the software to consume the types of data that we create didn't exist back then. So the idea that you could sell somebody $100,000 worth of drone kit, they could go fly and collect terabytes of data and then not have anywhere to put it or not have any way to consume that data.
Right.
So
And
at the
analyze it.
time, and as Exact Sense coming out of the accelerator, um, entering the kind of drone trade show space, we were probably the first to have the full backdrop 3D point cloud of the cell phone tower. We were doing it with LiDAR then, as well as photogrammetry. We were kind of testing all of the sensors and systems, and that got some attention. So we're talking 2016, 17. And that's really when your kind of customer discovery starts, right? That's the part of the journey that says, okay, this sounds like there's a real need here. This is a difficult to access, dangerous, costly, time sensitive piece of infrastructure that really is sorely missing an update. Today, they're still climbing towers, right?
Right.
Today, a tape drop still exists. A climber will still climb a tower to an antenna to drop a physical tape measure to the ground to get a measurement. So we're looking at an industry that seems to be stuck in 20, 30 years ago. And this was the birth of Vertspec as a platform to view, share, and consume the drone data, and ultimately an end-to-end solution, so you didn't have to kind of put all the puzzle pieces together of drone hardware, pilots, management, data, software solutions to get to the answer you're looking for. And at the time it was fairly focused on tower owners, where we saw the kind of the benefit of having the large picture of their vertical real estate.
Yeah, and I think it's cool because I always talk to plenty of people that are like, I don't know how to get into it. I don't know what to get into it. Should I do mapping and surveying? Should I do thermal? Should I do photography? It's like, and
Yep.
again, you took what you were good at or what you thought could help you in some ways, tested it out, learned, figured out that there was a need for it. And locally, right? It's like also just like starting there, trying to figure it out and then kind of broadening the horizons and how can you scale it. But the biggest thing is how can you solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately find that problem. And then now how do you execute it on it and find customers? Because I was a victim of it myself when I first started Map. It's like you test so many things, you try different markets. And at that time, we were just figuring it out as an industry too. It's like, what are we using it for? How are we using them? And who the hell do we sell this to?
Yep.
So I think you saw the need, you saw the problem, and now you're transitioning into this software platform, right? That you
Yeah.
can take to market and really try to scale it and find customers. Um, and take this journey of entrepreneurship to the next level
Yeah,
as
that's
well,
right. The
right?
journey of
Exactly.
Elon. Yeah, so I took an actual pain problem that was close enough to home or close enough to people that were bringing me the problem. And I think that's one thing that I started out that I did very well was listening to the problem. I think a lot of people in startup kind of tend to kind of try to shoehorn a solution into a problem. And
Yeah.
Telecom just seemed to be, screaming from the hilltops, looking for a new efficient solution. I think in some ways, they still are, and there still is a lot of innovation left in the space. So I'm kind of still excited about the future. But at the time, I mean, we're talking pretty hairy stuff. I mean, the drones weren't super hardened to fly around the towers. You've got very expensive equipment in the air. Um, the problem that you're solving is a high cost problem, but they want volume, right? I mean, it shaped up to be a
Yeah.
very interesting problem to solve. That I think those early problems we were trying to solve are solved, but then focusing in on one niche market, you realize how wide, how many problems then there are to solve after that. So Vertspec has grown much more than
Right.
just the platform, and leveraging my experience as a pilot, my hands-on with the hardware, and dealing with teams of pilots, which you have gotten very comfortable with, isn't as easy as it might sound from the onset.
Right. And when you said literally from the hilltops, we're talking hilltops. Like we've done some of these missions for you in the past, and towers are not. If anybody's out there done tower inspections, you know that they're not in a beautiful, most of the time, wide open space with easy access and right in the middle of somewhere where you have a pretty easy spot to get to, because there's a lot of challenges when it comes into inspecting these towers and getting either pilots or people that are climbing them to these sites, which presents its own challenges, right? But it also gives another opportunity for you to kind of eliminate some of them by flying a drone, right? And I guess I would love to too, because I've come across some of the challenges, obviously, in the past. But you have talked about like guide wires. You're looking for guide wires being frayed. You're looking for empty antenna space for new users. You're thinking about, obviously, vegetation and overgrowth and a lot of different areas that you're not just looking at this specific tower for one thing, right? So it's like,
Yep.
the software and the data that you can gather is useful in so many different ways. So I guess from your standpoint, once you started Vertspec and like where you're at today, or where you kind of transition into, how can you, or how have you seen that change of what you're looking for, what you're really providing, I guess, clients, and how often, I guess, is it rapidly changing? Are you finding every day, every week, every month to kind
Well,
of
you're asking a
provide more
very
value for these type of
pointed. I mean,
inspections?
it's a very topical question, right? So, in a year in 2023, where we've seen a downturn in capex from the carriers, and Telecom has seen a little bit of a downturn, you do what it takes to move a customer's project forward. So, in terms of what we're capturing at a site, and that shot list, I don't think it gets smaller very often, right? That this is one of those things that kind of grows all the time, and it's been Vertspec's mission from the beginning to over collect, over deliver, store data that has value again over time. So when we're on a site, typically it doesn't matter what you're asking for. We're collecting the entire suite, so that when you come back to the to the table to ask a specific question, we've got the answer for you. And the worst thing to do ever is to revisit a site, right? You don't want to redeploy to that craggy mountaintop that you mentioned to get to that cell phone tower. They are not always in the easiest places, so you don't want to go there often. So our kind of reason to be is to collect and over collect, and be able to deliver value over time. That said,
Yeah, and I think,
we come up with lots of new products all the time. I mean, we're happy to kind of do R&D and specialty work, so we're challenged. And I don't know, to my partners and other folks in my company, to their chagrin, I'm actually doing some hardware right now, which I'm not supposed to be doing, because we're more of a software company and a SaaS platform like itself. But sometimes you just need to either you see the opportunity to really solve a problem that has value, and then hopefully some dollar signs at the end for the company. But it's hard to just walk away and leave somebody empty-handed when your customers are looking for a solution.
yeah, and I think that's just evolving, right? And transitioning into something that you can hopefully spread across multiple clients as an additional service offering. You're finding another problem that a client might have, and it can be really spread across either other industries or other clients, and being
Yep.
able to give them that as an offering is always great too. So, something too that I think world where like digital twins are so important for that type of work and other things too, right? I know you put that in quotes, right? But I think it is something that I know I've seen more often, and I've heard a lot in the industry as a growing thing, where for assets and things that need to be inspected on a regular basis or more often than other things, it's important to gather this data, but then also have a spot to store it and analyze it, and get the answers you need in
Yep.
case of an emergency, or in case you can't get someone out there in
Yep.
a timely manner to inspect something, right? I mean, so I guess in your world today, right, of where you're at kind of with Vertspec and going forward? I know you mentioned a little bit of the hardware, which I don't want to get you in trouble with anyone on your team, so you don't have to talk too much about that. But where do you kind of see, Vertspec and yourself going forward as we kind of enter into a new year?
Well, I think I a mentor of mine reframed digital twin to me recently, which I think makes a lot of sense. In that a digital twin is not some photos that made a 3D model of an asset, but more so a digitization of the entire process so that it is repeatable, scalable, and efficient. And while I think we kind of assume or shoehorn drones into a solution as an easy and fast way to do something, they're producing a tremendous amount of data and a tremendous amount of sub processes to do something with that data, to answer a question or provide insight on the other side. So I like kind of looking at the digitization of an entire process, or the life cycle of an entire antenna installation in telecom, for example, and looking at the opportunities to provide value with one, data collection, and then data collection over time. I think that's really where the drone age is maturing to the next level. Is we've got Gen 2, 3, 4 of the data of the same object now, and we're going to be doing change detection and predictive maintenance for things that we haven't had before. And you go from just checking off a calendar to doing expensive maintenance to only doing maintenance when it's necessary and real savings. So we're moving out of that kind of hype phase into the reality of, this is what the tools really are good at doing. This is the type of drone to use for A and B, and the kind of skill level required for A is different than B, right? So companies can internalize some of the drone collection, and leave it to the telecom experts to fly towers around those guy wires. But to me, for Vertspec specifically, it's the value of that data over time and who has access to it, and really eliminating as many visits to that site and really making it as efficient as possible so that the true time and cost savings are there, or there's no reason to kind of adopt a new technology in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great model, as well as just kind of mindset on how he can better use the data and capture it, but also make use of it for time, not just a singular use. I think oftentimes in the industry is like, I need this captured for this thing, right? And then the data goes to waste, or they don't use it again, or they forget about it. I mean, I've had plenty of clients who's like reach out and it's like, hey, where's that data again? It's like, well, if it was important to you, where's you should, right? You should have it. You should be saving
Right.
that and storing it in a spot, which I think is great, that, you're providing that solution. I do want to touch a little bit about it because I think, I believe on the world that we're in is moving, like you said, to the AI and machine learning and all of that as well. And you kind of enjoy that space and those topics as well a little bit. So, how do you kind of, can you want to touch a little bit more on, like, are you using AI or thinking about it or talk about machine learning or anything in that space as well, or
I think
uh
we're pretty much coming up on a year of Chat GPT right now, anyway, during this recording session.
yeah.
So I think what a lot of us saw as kind of, just another advancement in a buzzword, AI, has really broke open. I mean, 2023 will be the year that AI image tools and chat changed the way anybody paying attention does business. So I I more than pay attention to it, I definitely actively use AI tools every day to invent new processes even. And I think we're in a high tech space, we're into drones, like it's cool nerdy tech stuff. The combination of the two, and the caches of data, the amount of um kind of insight that can get gleaned over time is I don't think we can even fathom it, honestly.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
when I need data transformation or simple tools, I write a sentence and I get a tool built for me right there. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm dangerous enough that I can cut and paste into a coding thing and get it to run and use a command line and terminal, but um, it's going to just get easier, right? That's going to dissolve. I'm blown away by it. I'm absolutely engrossed with the kind of pace that it's moving. I'm having a hard time understanding what my children's future looks like. But in the meantime, it's gone from a buzzword to a real time saver or an efficiency tool, and has shown its head as, I'm sure there's nefarious reasons to use AI, as there will be for everything.
For sure.
But I believe that it will take the work that we're doing at Vertspec, the type of data we're collecting, the ease of reporting on and making decisions, just insanely faster and easier.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the world has got this thing by the horns and we're on for the ride a little bit. It's hard to keep up with. So I think part of my job right now is to basically kind of stay on the boat, right? Make sure
Yeah,
that
exactly, right? Make sure we don't fall off. But
right.
I think that's just a really holistic approach to anything. It doesn't have to be, yes, we're talking about drones, and this is obviously very drone industry heavy and centric, but I think it's, even if whatever space you're in and industry and you're in, if you're using drones, if you're not, there's ways to use the technology around us that we have now today with AI and machine learning, everything to like you said, improve your processes, analyze your data, make things faster and efficiently. I think it's funny because there's so many people that say like, oh, this person's job or this type of person's job is going to be obsolete. And it's like, no, I think those type of positions are just going to be enhanced and be more valuable because they'll be able to provide more efficiency and information at a faster pace uh,
Yeah.
as we go forward, right?
You
So
could
it's
say
just
TGI made the drones autonomous, that the pilots were not necessarily. And I could say
right.
all day that autonomy in the future will make pilots, inconsequential to the supply chain of drone data. And it's never going to be true, almost, as much as like everybody would like to take that piece of expense out of there. There just is circumstances. There's not a drone in a box in every street corner and every car trunk and everything like that. So it's not a near reality, and
Yeah,
those people need to be managed. The data needs to be managed. So I think our missions are very well interconnected in that we want to grease the data getting into the hands of the decision maker, as with as little friction as possible.
yeah,
And when you've got scheduling and airspace authorizations problems, right? Missing data, revisits, who's going to touch, like all of that communication and things like that is not something that smaller enterprise customers are ever going to want to take on themselves or build. So it
yeah,
takes specific solutions like Vertspec in a market that understands the problems and needs of telecom customers, and then pilots to do those
definitely.
jobs. And then the tools needed to get those pilots to those jobs is something that Vertspec and other companies heavily rely on.
Yeah, and that's it. Putting the pieces together that you have in place to provide a holistic solution, right? Not a piecemeal thing, because I think that's anything, right? These days, if you're innovating in a space or you're providing a new solution, you're being able to create value in more than just one way, right? And being able
This is
to
all
really,
data they're happy to pay for in the end of the day. Everybody just wants to
yep,
make it as frictionless as possible to get to the answer. Nobody's
exactly,
happy if they have to do extra homework, right, to get the same grade. We're all just trying to get to the solution. And I think that you know we were talking about it maybe being on the infancy. This is the very beginning. I mean, just the pure, like, what's left in AI, what can be applied to the data that's coming out of the drone, is not even imaginable.
A ton. Yeah. We could have probably a whole nother episode just on that, right? And
Yep.
um yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I think it's constantly evolving as we're so new to that space as well. But I'm excited to kind of see once, how you guys continue to penetrate that space, and how you're going forward. But yeah, I guess I always love to kind of end the episodes to let people know, how can they reach out, how can they help you, how can they get in contact, who would you want, get in contact with, anybody, or just limited to certain people, whatever it is. How can they reach you, and how can anybody that's potentially listening, help you?
Yeah. Well, I'm fairly active on LinkedIn and on the usual spots in Facebook and things like that. Vertspec is easy to find at vertspec.com. I'm a pretty easy guy to reach out to. We're happy to get people into the space. I've been a drone advocate and a drone pilot advocate since the beginning. For drones by drones is kind of in the kind of underlying bylaws of the company, that I experienced it from both sides from the beginning. So I hope that we maintain a good reputation with the pilots, and the pilots are happy to fly for us to get Vertspec jobs done. And other than that, I am doing less of the drone shows and more of the telecom shows. But I do hope to return back to AUVSI and join some of my buddies in the pure drone space. To see which shirt they're wearing this year. But we're easy to find. Vertspec.com and on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm an easy get. So if
Awesome.
pilots are interested in getting into telecom, we've got training programs and are constantly kind of putting job specific training together. Or else you'll see our posts. We're always looking for people ready to get out to those mountaintops. Like you said, it's a specific type of drone pilot. It's not all green grass and easy driving. It's typically a 4x4 required, minimum. But I think it's rewarding work in the end. I mean, it certainly. I'm jealous that I don't get to fly anymore.
Hey, there are some beautiful spots. I've seen some of the data come through over the years, and it's I also am, well, in a coming from Wisconsin, where we're pretty flat in most cases. There's some beautiful views, no doubt, and doing some really cool stuff for a lot of different people. So Andy, I appreciate you being on today, and catching up, and being able to tell your story a little bit. So thanks again for hopping on with me today.
Yeah, man. Cody, I'm so excited, so honored to come on your show, and I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. And we'll put all of your information and links and everything else where people can reach you in the show notes, wherever you're listening to. I did this again for the first time last episode, but I'm learning. This is a new thing for me too. So, gotta promote it and whatnot. So if anybody enjoyed it, obviously reach out to me or Andy, inquire
Yep.
more, like, share, comment, whatever you can do to help us kind of promote some badass people doing some really cool stuff in the industry, paving their way, and making a legacy of their own. So I appreciate it again, Andy, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, fun. Thank you, Cody. Happy
Appreciate
landings
it.
out there, man. Bye.
Absolutely. Safe flying.